1, 2, 3, clap.
Clap.
This is just.
Why have I never thought of doing that?
Hi, and welcome to Hey Buddy, Nice Podcast. Over there in Scotland, finding new and inventive ways to annoy me, that's Brogan Hastings.
And over in Australia, getting more and more annoyed by the second it's Wayne Jopanazzi.
And the idea was to, rabble on a bit as we normally do, which I kind of am now anyway. But no, the music's playing, and we're going to introduce our very special guest. It is Nick Tangeman, Dr. Nick from Podtherapy.
Hello. I will do my obligatory correction. I am not a doctor, but we already talked about that.
Disclaimer.
Disclaimer, yeah. So
there's an asterisk.
Yes. Now, that I just have to say that. That's it. If you just want to continue calling me doctor, well, I've done my due diligence.
Mm-hmm.
So.
For legal purposes, you've just cleared the air a little bit, made sure that everyone listening is aware, but they're more than welcome to call you Dr. Nick.
If Dr. Dre is a doctor, then I don't see why I can't be.
Yeah. I did hear he went to, 7 years of rap school, didn't he? So
yeah. No.
Look, I do have one question to get started.
That's it. Okay.
First of all, I just want to know, how's the treatment for your back going?
Which treatment for my back?
Oh, from having to carry Jim on Podtherapy every single week.
It's funny because I wasn't sure if you were setting up a joke or if you were serious because I have had some back issues.
Oh no! Now I just feel bad.
No, nothing serious. I had like a precancerous mole that they had to cut off my back, and so I had stitches for a while. So that knocked me out because I do a lot of working out, so that's a big part of my routine is working out, and so I had to take a week off from that, which turned into 2 weeks, but who cares? And then also because of my golf swing, I have really tight lats on my right side and really lengthy lats on my left. And so my back is not really proportionate. So I've had to go to a chiropractor, and I foam roll my back a lot to kind of to correct all of that. So, but I'm sure carrying the show has probably contributed quite a bit too. Yeah,
I know what muscle lats are, and Brogan knows what muscle lats are. But for the cheese bags listening at home, where are the lats found?
If they're under if you can see the armpit here, the back muscle back there. Yep. That part right there. So it basically is responsible for pulling your elbows down if they're above your head. So if you're doing pull-ups, if you're doing a lat pull down, it's that muscle right there. Yep. I think it's the largest muscle in your back. So
yeah, that's right. Yeah, largest muscle in the back, pull-ups and let-downs. Yeah,
right.
So familiar.
Yeah, exactly.
That we'll go straight into it. I don't care because that ties into your business, MentalFitPersonalTraining.com.
Yes. Yep.
Can you tell us a bit about it?
The web address. So my background as a therapist is primarily in addiction treatment, substance use, and so there had been. I'm going to tell you the long story because we've got time.
That's good. Do you want a bed of music to play under it, or are you fine?
I'll leave that up to you. You're the expert on this. I'll just tell my story.
All right, you tell the story.
So what has been kind of interesting over the last pretty much since the 80s is kind of when there was a big shift in substance use treatment, because within the 80s, the 60s, 70s, even go back to the 40s, the big push for treating addiction was the 12-step programs. And the 12-step programs, I don't really have any beef with them, except for the fact that early on, they were very shame-based, and so was treatment. So if you had a substance use problem, if you had, alcoholism or whatever, the treatment for it was very shame-based, and they made you feel like, you're broken, there's something wrong with you, blah, blah, blah. And you're destroying your family. And so it was kind of like this push to make you feel terrible.
Yeah.
And then that feeling terrible is going to then turn into you doing something about it.
Like, this is your fault kind of thing as well. Blame being,
Yeah. And what has happened, I'm working in this field at a very interesting time, because what's happening is we're starting to understand a lot more about the brain. And there's so little that we even understand about it today. But as we start learning more about how the brain functions, and we're starting to realize that even though something can be a personal choice, there is a biological component to who becomes an addict or an alcoholic and who doesn't. And so, and also the behavior itself actually changes the way that the brain functions, which is really interesting. And so we started changing our approach when dealing with addiction, and kind of this understanding that what we're dealing with is a chronically relapsing condition. And even though it manifests itself in a person's behavior, there's a lot more biological behind it. And so it completely changed the way that we treat substance use disorder. And the shame does nothing to actually help people. So we kind of start, focusing more on establishing a good rapport, and focus on kind of teaching that person, how do we deal with these cravings and urges, and understanding that this is going to continue to happen. And you have to kind of create a lifestyle that will support ongoing recovery, as opposed to just this, shame on you way of dealing with it. And so anyway, that's kind of where we are in addictions treatment. And then I personally got into fitness about 7 years ago, because I was going through a really nasty divorce, and I just needed to get out of the house. I needed something to do. So I started going to the gym, and I noticed I started feeling better. So that's why I went, because I just started feeling better about myself. And so I just continued to do it. So I've been, exercising regularly for many years. And then one day I'm watching TV, and I think it was on the Learning Channel, or TLC, which we have here in the United States, which never has anything to do with learning, by the way.
I've only just realized now that TLC stands for the Learning Channel. And that doesn't make sense to me from what I've seen on TLC.
It makes no sense. So I'm watching this show, and it's called Fit to Fat to Fit is what it's called. And it basically started off with this personal trainer who had this idea of, he had been fit and active his whole life, and he had been working with his clients, and he couldn't understand why his clients weren't making progress. So to prove to them how easy this was, he decided that he was going to put on 60 pounds and then lose this weight with his clients. Okay. And he learned a lot going through that process, that it's not that easy. It's it's really hard to do. But one of the things that's really interesting, so basically what this show is it's just that. So they pair up somebody who wants to lose weight with a personal trainer, but before the trainer can actually start working with a client, they have to gain the amount of weight that this person's supposed to lose, or as much to it as they can, and then they lose it together.
This is very method acting, isn't it?
Yeah. Very much so. And
Christian Bale.
Yeah, he would probably be great at it.
Oh yeah.
But what was interesting is that every single one of them was like, oh yeah, I could do that. It'd be tough, but I could do it, But what they don't realize is how the brain starts to change, And so with this personal trainer, as he was going through it, he started doing things like sneaking food. He's supposed to be losing weight, and he started like going back into his office and hiding and eating pizza, and it's just and it's that food that almost kind of really it looks a lot like addiction, And so it was at this point where I realized that the fitness industry and substance use are very closely related as far as treatment goes, except substance use disorder treatment is about 15 years in the future from where the fitness industry is.
Wow.
So then at that point I decided there's no one else really doing this work. So I already have the training as a therapist. How about I just get become a personal trainer, and then I can start kind of merging these two together, and actually start, working with people, but doing it from a therapy informed perspective, because that's what the personal trainers don't have. Yep. They don't really have that understanding of how the brain works and how to actually motivate people when, if their philosophy is that this is just a weakness, a personality flaw, or lack of motivation. That's not at all what it is. I mean, people are very, very motivated, but they don't give enough credit to how difficult and how challenging it really is.
Yeah.
So that was how I kind of came up with MentalFit personal training.
It's very interesting that the parallels are there that exist. That, yeah, it's just not something I think that is thought about in that way.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, when it comes to addiction, I mean, obviously, I assume the substance itself is lending to the addiction. But then you've got people who talk about having, I've got an addictive personality, and does that come into play as well? Like, are both things sort of affecting addiction?
Kind of. The addictive personality thing doesn't. There's something to it, but it's not really an addictive personality, because addiction and personality happen in two different parts of the brain.
Yeah.
So they're not really connected in that sense. But I think what it is I think sometimes people have kind of this, they become very hyper-focused on things, right? So like for me, as an example, when I do something, I do it full force, and I just my brain gets on something and it just sticks there. And so Jim likes to joke about this too, like when I learned to play guitar, like a lot of people, they'll pick up the guitar and somebody will just teach them like, okay, here's an E chord and here's an A and here's a G, and then they just like, okay, well, that's what those chords are, and on to the next thing. But for me, I don't learn that way. So like if you show me this is an E minor chord, I want to know, well, why? Why is it an E minor? What makes it an E minor? Like, and so I have to learn the whole, like, I got to learn music theory in order to play an instrument.
No.
And so, and I think that's just kind of one of those things that, people get really fixated on certain things. And so that may be part of it, but ultimately a lot of like what determines whether or not somebody becomes addicted to something is usually a genetic predisposition.
Okay.
Or sometimes it is age of onset. So if like most, I would say probably 99% of the clients that I've worked with throughout my entire career, they all started using before the age of 18. Like they were all adolescents using drugs. And that's very important, because what happens is as we learn a lot in those adolescent years, and towards the end of those adolescent years into the early 20s, our brain goes into what's known as synaptic pruning. So basically your brain connects all these neurons together, and it's this huge web. And then what it does is for efficiency purposes, it decides to go in there and start cutting connections. And it's like, okay, you don't need this one. You don't need this one. This one seems to be really important because it happens all the time, so we're going to keep that one. And so it starts to prioritize what to keep and what to get rid of. And so if you have been actively using it as a teenager, and so your brain thinks like, oh, well, this is really important to hold on to. It must be because we do it every day. Let's hold on to that and let's start cutting other things, which is the exact reason why it's so much easier for kids to learn a second or third language than it is for an adult, right?
Yeah.
And so that's definitely part of it as well.
So those neural pathways are still, I mean, they're still developing, still children really. So, and then
I would say the one big exception to that would be opiates. Because because I've worked with a lot of people who never touched a drug their whole life, and then they go in for a knee surgery, and then after that they're hooked on these opiates, pain meds.
Yeah, and that's a totally different story as well with opiates. I mean, I guess It could be because if they're seeing it as, well, this is my medication. It's not street drugs. I ain't getting my drugs from Jimmy on the corner in a little baggie or nothing.
Jim's side hustle.
Yeah. Jim does not prescribe, remember, not an actual doctor. No, sorry, Jim does. Oh wow, yeah, Jim prescribes. No, wait, does Jim prescribe?
No, he does not. No, he
doesn't. That would be
not
a
officially
psychiatrist.
on the street.
It's like, yeah, okay, got ya. Oh, microphone abuse. So there's sneaky ways for addiction and substance abuse to get to you then, even without those neural connections. Is that based still on that, yes, this drug is addictive, or it's still, well, this is good for me, you're learning a new behavior, so that is what keeps it up?
Yeah, so there's what we call kind of the biopsychosocial model of addiction. So there, and we call it that because you're kind of on three different levels: biologically dependent, and actually dependency is probably a better word for this than addiction, but biologically dependent, psychologically dependent, socially dependent. So biologically dependent, basically the opiates are a great example of that, right? Where it provides an effect that the body recognizes, like, oh, I take this substance and then this thing happens. We need to do this more often. Right. And so and then what happens is you take that away and then all of a sudden your body goes into withdrawal. So if this substance helps me relax and it kind of brings me down, then my withdrawal symptoms are going to be the opposite of that, which are going to be ramping me up. Right. Vice versa. Then if you're, taking a substance like a cocaine or methamphetamine or something like that really ramps you up, you take that away. One of the biggest withdrawal symptoms that we have to deal with is really deep depression. So that's very common. So you can kind of see that opposite effect. So the body becomes dependent on it. So I don't know if you've ever listened to Dr. Mike and Dr. Matt, their medical podcast, but they did
not religiously, but I have heard them. Yes, yeah.
They've done an episode where they talk about homeostasis, and homeostasis is your body's ability to kind of maintain that balance, right? So it's kind of like a thermostat in your house. If you set your house to 72 degrees Fahrenheit or whatever that is in Celsius, and as if it's summertime, then it's gonna, temperature's gonna ramp up, it's gonna go up, and then it's gonna click this trigger point that will turn on the air conditioner, and then it'll bring it back down. Gets to another trigger point, turns it off, and it'll just naturally, you get this kind of wave, right?
I'm just gonna have to stop you there. I know this is your expertise that you're telling us about, but we're talking aircon now. It's a set point. It reaches set point, and then that triggers the aircon to kick in.
I totally forgot that this is your wheelhouse.
Yeah.
See, worlds collide.
And I think you'll find that there's a lot to do with air conditioning and addiction therapy, actually.
Probably.
Yeah, the parallels, which I'm actually launching a new business. It's Aircon Fit. I don't know how the fitness fits into it yet. But I'm told that there are parallels between addiction treatment, substance treatment, and fitness. So I think I've got something.
Yes, go for it. I'm gonna I can't wait for this to launch, and I'll help build your website for whatever it's worth.
Did you personally build MentalFitPersonalTraining.com?
Obviously, I did. Look how terrible it is.
I was looking at it, and it was all right. There was absolutely nothing wrong with it.
It was my first attempt at building a website. So if you pull up the website, folks at home, MentalFitPersonalTraining.com. You'll see some pictures up there. There's only 3 pictures of me on the entire website, and they just happen to be pictures that I had already in my phone.
You didn't get new headshots or anything?
No, but I really need to, because none of them are gym related. It's just or workout related. It's just a picture of me. And there's one that my friend Brian just cracks up every time he sees it. because it reminds him. I don't know if you've ever seen South Park. Do you girls watch South Park at all? Okay. So the episode, this is many years ago after the BP oil spill, where the oil exec starts putting out all of these ads saying like, "Oh, we're sorry." And it's always him like in a field of flowers, like, "Oh, we're sorry." And then there's one of him naked on a bearskin rug.
Yeah.
And he's like, "I'm sorry." And so my friend Brian, every time he looks at that website, he sees one picture of me and he's like, "That's your I'm sorry photo," because you look exactly like the guy on South Park on the bearskin rug.
Yeah, is it the one of you at the park or in front of the flower-painted wall?
The one at the park.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, so the one on the contact page, you're sitting. This is more of your. It's almost a come hither kind of look.
Is that the one with the mural in the background?
Yeah, there's like a wall painted with a flowery mural.
Yeah, so that was actually taken at the Velveteen Rabbit on South Main at the bar. Yeah. So Laura and I went out for drinks one night and we were just sitting there and she's like, "Oh," she's got an eye for photos. And so anytime she sees the situation, where she's got a good photo of me, she's always snapping photos. And I try to do the same, but I don't have that same eye. So like my photos of me always turn out really well. And like photos of her are just like she's got one eye open, kind of sideways. Yeah.
Do you use an Android or an iPhone?
I've got an Android. She has an iPhone.
Okay. Is it a Samsung?
Yes, it is.
You can turn on motion photo. So it records a bit before and a bit after when you hit the shutter. So you can get those eyes open every time now.
No kidding.
Yeah.
See, I didn't come here for tech advice, but here we are. You never know what you're going to learn on this podcast.
Yeah, it's always
I've learned about the connection between HVAC and therapy and fitness. I'm learning about cameras. Brogan, what do you have to offer? I haven't heard much from you. What can you teach me?
I mean, the problem is I have ADHD. I'm not officially diagnosed, but I'm 99% convinced I've got ADHD. So I don't actually know. I'm just sitting here thinking addiction. I'm sitting here thinking this is all very familiar. Like, oh shit, that me. Everything you're saying, I'm like, that's me.
There's just one thing that Brogan is thinking of at the moment, and that is a star from a 90s sitcom television series.
This episode is going out before.
I know.
That
it's called Setting Up the Bit, Brogan.
Okay, so one of the reasons I think I have ADHD is because I do get those hyper focuses, and it really does affect me to the point that I can't focus and stuff. Yeah. And addictive personality. I mean, it ain't drugs, so that's good. It's sugar, chocolate, and all that shite.
Caffeine is a drug.
Yeah. Pepsi Max.
Yeah. And there's caffeine. Caffeine and chocolate.
Even sugar, like I mean, people go through withdrawal when they cut out sugar. Like it's and here in America, it's everywhere. Like you can't buy anything that doesn't have sugar in it. And,
your food tastes so good, though. It tastes so good.
Right?
It is some sweet baked bread. It is so sugary.
Yeah, it's almost candy. Yeah, everything we have is just candy.
It's amazing, and I miss it.
But then again, your candy is not great at all. Chocolate,
right?
American chocolate is terrible. Yeah,
you think
candy
be better
is
at
fine. Yeah.
It's the only issue I have with American chocolate is that it tastes shite. But that's why I come and I bring my own personal chocolate.
The only issue I have with it is it's just fucking terrible.
All the other American candies are chef's kiss, great, love it. Eat too much.
Yeah, the sugar. I don't know. Candy. We would call them lollies, but in America, it's all everything is classified as candy, whether it's chocolate or the other stuff. I don't know. I can only call it candy.
Yeah, and the line is getting blurred between what's candy and what's not candy.
Yeah. It's like vitamin water. I mean, I know that vitamin water I guess sugar is a vitamin. No. What about the color red? Is the color red a vitamin?
No. Nope.
Yeah, that's advertising practices. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, no, you're 100% correct. Yeah, I mean, everything is even like medications. That's I was, let's see, I'm 42 now. I was probably 40 years old when I realized that the rest of the world doesn't do that.
Yeah, first
The
time
rest
I
of the world
saw
doesn't advertise medication on TV. I was like, what?
Yeah. See, we do, but it's like basic stuff like paracetamol.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which never makes sense to me because our brand is Panadol for paracetamol. I can't remember what the equivalent is in America. It's different drug, but essentially the exact same thing. And they would advertise Panadol on television, and then they would advertise Panadol Rapid because it's also got caffeine in it, so it works faster. It's like, why are you going to advertise the regular Panadol if you've got this product that works better? It's like, no, I want my headache to go on just a little bit longer. It's like,
Jerry Seinfeld had a bit about that, like the whole medication extra strength. And it's like, well, once you have extra strength, then like no one's doing just strength anymore. It's just all extra.
It doesn't need to exist if there's something better. But yeah, it blew my mind when I realized that those advertisements were actually real and not just a thing on comedic television shows.
It does crack me up. Ask your doctor about. I'm like, do people do that? Like,
I don't know. I've never asked my doctor about a specific medication for anything. It's so strange.
Hi, doc. This medication. I mean, it says that it's good for my blood pressure, but I mean, the anal leakage I'm a bit concerned about. Can you fill me in a bit more? So, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, exactly. But I guess I don't know. I guess that works. Otherwise, they wouldn't be spending millions of dollars doing it. But it's so bizarre if you really think about it. They're not
spending that money on a healthcare system, so they've got to spend it on something else.
Yeah, it's got to go someplace. Yeah,
medication is healthcare, Brogan. But another thing, the price of watermelons. My God.
Truth be told, I haven't purchased any watermelons lately, so I couldn't even tell you the price of watermelons. You know what's really interesting, though, is with all the talk of inflation, like I know it's happening. I can feel it's happening. But if somebody asks me like, oh, what did you pay for milk last week? Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know the prices of individual items that I buy.
Really?
No. Yeah, it's really weird. There are certain staple items that I buy every week that, I usually get, because I do a lot of fitness stuff. I kind of live off chicken breast. And so, I'll get a package of chicken breasts, and I could not tell you right now how much I pay for that. I just grab it and I just kind of put it in the cart. Which I guess is probably, I need to pay more attention to stuff like that. I know what I should be spending as far as the grand total. Like that I already know. But each individual
you get to the checkout.
item,
get to the checkout and it's not over a certain amount, and it's like Price is Right rules. It's a win. It's good.
It's like, the whole entire cart fit the price that I was expecting it to be. So that's where I notice inflation. But individual items, I've never paid attention to. Somebody could just mark up chicken breast to like $200. And I would not notice until I, looked at the total bill. And I was like, well, that seems odd. This is a car payment. Like
it must have been a heavier pack of chicken breast this week.
Exactly.
I like the implication that you would continue to buy it. This is going on my cart then.
Well, I'm already at the checkout. I'm not gonna. What am I gonna
turning around? And it's a self-checkout, and it's kind of awkward to get out of because they sort of barricade it off, and then you got to push the cart past people. It just doesn't work.
I always do the self-checkout now. I have almost no human interaction when I go to the grocery store.
That's the way it should be.
Yeah,
it is how it should be in most situations, almost every situation.
Yeah.
Also, for those playing at home, I paid $3.95 for 1.5 liters of milk.
Okay.
That's my specific milk that I buy.
For those playing at home, I don't buy milk, and I live with my parents who do the shopping, so I have no idea.
Fair enough.
Okay, so if you I don't know how much fast food you eat, much if any.
So this is actually a really good question. I know I wasn't expecting good questions coming onto this podcast, but that's a really good one. This is something that so we have on Pod Therapy, we have a Pod Therapy Discord.
Mhm.
So we've got a Discord channel. One of the channels on that is TheraFit. It's called TheraFit.
Yeah.
And it's for a lot of our listeners who are working out or exercising, whatnot. And they like to go in there and kind of communicate with each other and kind of talk about how things are going. And I've noticed that there's a really good benefit in me talking about my struggles, because I spend a lot of time, talking about, here's kind of the science behind why we're doing what we're doing. And here are some ways to motivate yourself. And I'm giving a lot of tips to other people, but there's a lot of value in me being able to go on there and say, like, hey, I've missed the last 3 workouts, and then them hearing like, oh, wow, that's awesome to hear that this is a struggle for Nick too, and I think fast food is definitely one of those issues for me, because for me, it all starts with me working out on a regular basis. So if I'm exercising, if I'm going to the gym, when I'm supposed to be going to the gym, as I've planned out, I will eat good. I'll eat really well. If I start missing, then my diet starts to kind of fall apart. But it's not the other way around. It's not like if I'm eating well, that motivates me to go to the gym. It always starts with the behavior of going to the gym and getting on a regular program. Then the eating patterns will just naturally follow, right? But what happens then is, because I'm doing personal training now, the time that I spend in the gym training other people cuts into my time that I had previously planned for myself. And then I start missing days. And then when I start missing days, then I just kind of go into this mode where I don't prepare anymore. If I prepare for the week, I've got my meals all figured out. I know what I'm going to do. And so it's really easy for me to kind of stick to it. But what tends to happen then is, like today, like I haven't gone grocery shopping. I probably should have done that yesterday, and I didn't. So
because today it's Sunday, grocery shopping on a Sunday. There's nothing worse.
Yeah, it's gonna suck. Yeah, I know that for sure. But if I don't, then what happens is, then it's usually fast food. But here's the other really important thing that I like to talk about with my program is there's no such thing as good food and bad food. Food is food, right? So the way that I always like to explain it to people is there's food for fuel and food for pleasure. And both are really important and both have a place in our lives. So food for fuel is basically like your body is a sports car and it needs a good gasoline or petrol, as you folks call it. To be able to fuel that engine, right? And you got to put good fuel in there for it to work and perform how it's supposed to perform. So there's things that you want to eat for the sake of nutrition. So don't go into eating that meal with the expectation that this is going to be delicious and I'm just going to love it, because that's not what this food's about. This food's about fueling your body. But then there's other food for pleasure that is still useful. Brogan's got chocolate. Brogan shouldn't have to stop eating chocolate, right? Because it sounds like that's an important part of your life, right?
You just heard it from a doctor, Brogan.
Oh, I honestly wish it worked that way, because I think one of the things with that is it comes down to moderation as well.
Absolutely. And this is why. Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I have absolutely, I am not able to do things in moderation. It's, and my mom's the same. We had this conversation quite recently. I have to go cold turkey. I have some chocolate here. I will be eating that, and then starting Monday, I will not be eating chocolate. I will go through the 3-day withdrawals. It will fucking suck. But yes.
Now, there's a couple different schools of thought with this. One is kind of that cold turkey. You've got to eliminate it altogether. And some people do that, and they have a lot of success with it. For some people, they can do it for a little bit, and then they end up falling back on it, because it's this idea of restricting and limiting that causes so much internal conflict and so much internal stress that people can't maintain it for very long, because it creates this form of, if I do this, then I'm bad, or I shouldn't be craving this, or I shouldn't be, all of these things. And you kind of create this mindset of this ideal version of yourself that needs to be perfect. And it's never going to be perfect. You're going to have these weak moments, and you're going to have these times where, you're going to want to give into these cravings. And if now you have to deal with, not only are you eating a food that you are trying to not limit, or you're trying to eliminate, not only are you eating that food, but now you feel bad about yourself for doing it. So you've made the problem 2 times as bad, right? And sometimes the shame and guilt is even worse for you than the actual chocolate. So the method that I like to use with a lot of my clients is, we've got 2 categories of food, right? The food for fuel and the food for pleasure. What we're going to do is we're going to prioritize one. We're not going to eliminate the other, but we're going to prioritize the food for fuel. So for me, what that looks like is I've got a certain amount of vegetables I need to eat, and I'm not a vegetable guy. Matter of fact, growing up, I don't remember mom ever making vegetables or serving vegetables. I really don't remember. And I know for a fact I spent 4 years in college with 0 vegetables. Not even on thing. Like, if they put a vegetable on something I was going to eat, I would probably remove the vegetable and just eat.
Green stuff? What the hell?
Yeah, that's gross. You got this off the ground. I'm not going to eat that. So for me, it's all about, like, I prioritize the food for fuel first. I'm never going to tell myself I can't have something. So, like, for me, if I'm watching a movie, it's popcorn and M&Ms, like, together. I love that sweet and salty, and I also need something that's a carbonated beverage. So, I would love to have a soda with that. I'm not going to tell myself I can't have that, because then I'm depressed. And then if I'm depressed, then what the hell's the point of doing any of this? Right. I don't want to be fit and all of that, and then just hate myself and hate life. So instead, what I do is I tell myself, you absolutely can have that. You're a grown-ass man. You can have whatever you want. But first, we're going to do this. So first, we're going to prioritize the veggies. So we're going to eat these vegetables first. Well, then we need to get some protein in there. So, and we need to get some carbs in there as well. So we're going to do that. And then once we've done that, then later on down the road, when we go to the movie, then we can have that other thing.
When you go, I'm picturing you sneaking in like baggies of vegetables and chicken into the cinema. That would be a bit weird.
Those people should get punched in the throat.
Yeah.
I don't really mean that for you listeners at home. But I will say I am not that person. I will never do that.
See, we've got some cinemas that have like a luxury class here where you can like order meals to your seat, and it just seems weird.
We have a few of those in Vegas too. Yeah, definitely. And that's the thing too, is like a lot of the restaurants that you go to, like I'll do the same thing. Like, if we're going to go out to eat, I always try to, I have to include vegetables in every meal. Like I got to include them somehow. But I do that knowing that even the vegetables in America are candy. It's funny because, like, I never thought that I would be a Brussels sprouts kind of guy, but I do eat a lot of Brussels sprouts. But when I make them at home, I understand they're not going to be amazing. They're not going to be very tasty. I've got a few recipes that I can do that make them tolerable, and that's pretty much it. But like, where was I the other night? Where I went to, I can't remember, but it was a restaurant here in Vegas, and I ordered the Brussels sprouts, and I was like, oh my God, these are the most amazing things I've ever had in my life.
If you say sparrow and wolf, I wouldn't be surprised.
They probably have them. But it's because it was cooked in, like a pound of butter and
sugar, salt, fat.
Exactly. Like sprinkled with like Skittles, something just to make it, extra tasty.
It's when Ready Rich took us to Peppermill on our last visit to Vegas. The first thing he ordered was a giant fruit plate. It's like, awesome, whole bunch of fresh fruit with this like marshmallow sauce to pour all over it.
Yeah, that's America.
Yeah.
The funniest thing I think about American food, though, is I don't put on weight when I go to America. I don't lose weight, but I don't gain weight until I come back.
But also, when you come to America, you're busy.
Exactly.
That's true.
I mean, you got your walking shoes on, right?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
It's nonstop, really.
Yeah.
For us. It's like, I mean, it got to the point where I hadn't weighed myself in 2 weeks, and we were down at Fremont Street, and I said to Brogan, "Hey, you got the Heart Attack Grill there. They got the giant scale out the front where if you're over a certain weight limit, you get to eat free." So I can see if I've put on any weight, and I think it was saying that I had, and I was like wrecked. I was destroyed. I was like, how is this even possible? But of course, the scales are rigged to try and, it's like.
But you were really insistent.
The same.
You were really insistent, and I was like, "We can't do this because this will. If I put on weight, it will fuck me up." And I was, you were like, "Yeah, we're going to go do it," and then you done it, and you were really depressed. I was like, "Well, now I have to." Yeah, and I think I was exactly the same. And I was like, I feel great now."
Yeah, that means I have to have put on weight then, because when it comes to food and all that, I'm in a different situation to most other people, because I've had weight loss surgery. So you talk about eating for fuel and eating for pleasure, fun, whatever. I can't eat much at all. So I'm not, but I should be a lot more conscious of eating for fuel, because I can eat whatever I want because it's the same portions. Like I could eat some chocolate, I could eat something healthy, I could eat a piece of chicken. And at the moment, my weight just does not change no matter what I'm eating. But weight is not a key indicator of health. So if I'm not getting protein that I need, it's just a different. It's something I'm aware of, but I'm not actively working on.
Yeah. No, and I mean, you bring up some really good points. Like, when we're talking about weighing ourselves, I have a scale in my bathroom that has no footprints on it. Like, because I clean my bathroom and it's got a kind of a glass top to the scale. And I clean my bathroom on a regular basis, and all I'm doing is dusting it off. I'm not cleaning any footprints off it because I never use it. Like, I can't even tell you the last time that I stepped on a scale, because for me, I think for a lot of people, it doesn't make any sense, because it's telling you one piece of information that there's so many different factors that go into that it's not really, unless you know exactly what you're looking for, it's not all that helpful. Like for me, because if I could gain muscle, lose body fat, and the scale could go up, it will go up. Muscle is more dense, and so for me, it's not about weight, it's more about how I feel. Like I've been doing this long enough where I'm kind of in tune with how mentally and emotionally I feel when I eat certain things, and how I feel when I have been working out regularly and when I haven't. And I think that, for me, is the thing that I would like to get all of my clients to that point where they're not even looking at the scale. They just know that, like, oh, you know what? When I have these foods, I feel really good about myself, and not just immediately. Because you can have some foods that you feel great about yourself right after eating them, and then about 10 minutes later you crash, right? But having those foods that you can eat on a regular basis, that you just kind of feel like, oh, I feel full, but not like drugged down where I have to lay down. Like I feel full but active, and I can still move. Like that, I think, is some very useful data.
So it's again tying the physical fitness and mental fitness. It's taking an approach based on feeling the same way you could within your own mental status, like being aware and taking stock of how you are feeling, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And a big part of it too is, I have some clients that I work with that the reason they're working out is to deal with anxiety, right?
Mm.
Or to deal with stress or to deal with depression, whatever it is. And the more we learn about the brain and how the brain works, the more we're understanding that it's really most useful for movement. The example that I like to use is the sea squirt, which is a little
the
marine
creature.
animal,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
It's born with a brain, but then once it attaches to something, it stays there the rest of its life, right? So once it attaches to something, the very first thing it does is it digests its own brain because it's not needed anymore. It doesn't move. And so it's kind of this idea that the reason that we have a brain is for movement. So if we're kind of in this society now where like our brain has developed so much that now we've discovered, I don't have to move. I've invented a phone that I can like call somebody to bring things to me, so I don't have to actually get up and do anything. So we've kind of evolved to that point. But we still need to be able to move around on a regular basis and getting into that regular movement. And that really has a huge effect on our emotions and our ability to process stress and to do all of that. So I think that's the big push behind what I'm doing, is to be able to work with people, to be able to understand, like, you actually have more control over your anxiety than you think you do. And that's one of the things too that I think regular exercise and working out teaches you, is when you kind of push your body and you start learning that your limits are way beyond what you thought they were, and you could actually do more than what you thought you could do. It kind of starts to create this optimism of like, there's, maybe there's other things that I can do, or I have more control over these other components that I thought I was a victim of. I thought, my anxiety was always in charge, or my depression was always in charge. And then you start learning like, oh no, there's some little things I can do to manipulate those things. And it's very empowering.
How does that work with something like ADHD, in the sense, like, I've been watching a lot of stuff on TikTok about it, and it's like, with it, you need immediate results. If there's no consequences, there's no foresight, there's no hindsight, nothing like that. I'm a person who needs immediate results, which is why I really struggle with the weight loss thing, because it's just that. I struggle with saving money because I can't see it immediately. I struggle with a lot of things like that. So how does that work with the exercise thing?
You are 100% correct. And here again, we see the parallels between my work in addictions treatment and fitness, because that was probably the number one struggle that I had with all my clients when they would come to me for substance use disorder, is if you use heroin, you get the benefits of using heroin immediately.
Yeah. I say that like someone who knows what it's like to experience heroin. I don't. If my mother listens to this, I have never had drugs.
and so that's always been the biggest battle, is, because the benefits of being in long-term recovery, they don't happen right away, right? I mean, the benefits of turning your life around and getting sober, your family trusts you. In 3 to 5 years, you're able to, find a job in a couple years, or a job you like in a couple years. You're able to save money long term. You're able to build trust with other people long term. None of it happens like the first day. And that is always the biggest struggle for those people with substance use disorders, because they go into treatment and they're like, okay, I've got 2 days clean. My family should trust me now. Like, no, that doesn't happen. So even like with fitness and things like that, if you're, I think what you have to do is you have to look for the small things that do happen immediately, because there are immediate effects. but they're not the ones that you're looking for.
Yeah.
And kind of as the old saying goes, is you find what you look for. If you're looking for certain things, you're going to find it because your brain automatically is tuned to look for it.
Mm-hmm.
So what we have to do is we have to start identifying small things that you can experience right away, and actually take note of that. And so this is where kind of mindfulness meditation comes into play, with working out and eating and things like that. One of the things that I always encourage my clients to do is to kind of, right after a workout, really do some mindfulness and kind of explore what's happening in your body. Like, how do you feel mentally? How do you feel emotionally? How does your body feel? Because your body may feel like exhausted, like you just want to lay down and you just want to pass out. But what else do you feel? Like, oh, well, I feel really alert. I feel a sense of accomplishment. I feel, all of these little things that if I didn't directly ask you, you would not have recognized.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of the way to get through that until you do start seeing those results. Because then once you start seeing those results, then it becomes a little bit more motivating, then it becomes a lot easier to be able to follow through with. But you have to have something in the meantime to get you through day to day.
Yeah.
So that would be my advice, is to kind of start looking for what really small things do you notice?
Interesting.
So with the small wins, if it's comparing it to, so there is definitely a timeline involved, going from small wins to the big wins. Is it something that typically people notice when it does start happening, or is it almost like it's slow progression? So it's like one day it's just kind of, oh wow, things are getting better.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of depends on the person, but I think for the most part, you don't recognize those small things unless you're looking for them. Like for me, in my fitness journey, like I said, I was going to the gym because I needed something to do. Yeah. And that was it. And so I guess this is probably another really good point to bring up, is like understanding what your motivation is. Because if your motivation is weight loss, then you have to identify some things that are going to get you to that point. Some things that are going to keep you motivated, because it's so like, that's a long-term goal. It takes a long time to get to that. So you have to identify some of those other things. For me, when I first started, like I said, because my objective was to get out of the house and do something, I was getting reinforced immediately, because it was meeting that goal.
Yeah.
And it wasn't the house.
Yeah. And it wasn't until later that, when I started noticing changes in my body, that it became way more motivating. And even that, like, to be honest, I worked out for 2 years without really noticing any kind of physical effect. And that's because I didn't change what I was eating. Yeah. And, that's 90% of all of this is, just changing what you're eating. But by that time, I'd been working out for 2 years. I was already in a really good habit of exercise, that as soon as I changed my diet, like, I noticed almost immediately. It was very reinforcing, because I got results right away, because I was already doing the work in the gym. I just had to change that last little thing. But yeah, I think, if you're going there with the mindset of I want to lose weight, then I would also add some other things to your, motivation. Like, what else do you want? Other than that, what else would be some nice things to have from working out?
Yeah.
So if you find a motivation that is more obtainable, or even easily obtainable, it's beneficial to at least in the beginning.
Yeah. And I think the biggest struggle for a lot of people, especially when we're talking about exercise and like going to the gym, is just the act of going to the gym, because it's a very intimidating place. And I've been working out for, like I said, 7-8 years. And even when I go to my gym at a different time during the day, I'm intimidated. And it's like, but when I go in the morning, I know everybody there. Yeah. And I feel like I can walk in there. I feel like it's my home. I feel like I've got that much ownership over everything that's happening. But if I go in there at 6 o'clock at night, it's a whole different crowd. And I feel like everybody's looking at me, and I feel like everybody is judging me or kind of sizing me up, and I see, these guys that, are obviously way stronger than I am and bigger than I am. And like, I feel like I'm just going to go in the corner here, in the dark. And I'm just going to do a few things over here where no one can see me.
Nick, you're the strongest in our hearts.
Oh, thank you. But when I think about it, it's like, it's really kind of ridiculous because it's one of those things that, like, somebody probably thinks that of me if they show up in the morning, right? But I'm not looking at anybody else. I don't pay attention. I'm totally zoned in on what I'm doing. No one else even pops into my head. Right. Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that, like, I like to explain to people too, is like, you're not as noticeable as you think you are, unless you're doing some crazy Spider-Man shit on some of the equipment. Like, like,
no one's even going people to watch them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like Yeah. I mean, very different if you're walking down the street and you're silently judging someone as they walk the other way. Right. I mean, I think that's fair game. But yeah, I think everyone is not self-absorbed, but concerned about their own thing if they're trying to better themselves. Most of the people anyway, I imagine.
Yeah. It sounds a bit like that embarrassing memory thing where it's like you remember something embarrassing you did years ago, you go, oh my God. And then it's like, try to remember something embarrassing somebody else did.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't remember that shit.
Yeah. So why do you think you're so important that everybody remembers your thing? Yeah. No. Yeah.
I mean, I've got a couple of examples I'm not going to go into because.
Yeah. But I think, like 95% of everybody that goes into the gym that I've met and have actually talked to have been really cool people. Mm-hmm. But in my mind, before I actually talk to them, I picture that they're judgy and they're superficial and they're just that type of person. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, I mean, everybody is very, very helpful and they're there to help and all that. But anyway, I guess where I was kind of going with this is, like, one of the first things to do if you go down this journey is to just start to become familiar with the gym. Mm-hmm. And so I always tell folks, when they come to the gym for the first time, walk in the door, set your stuff down, and then just walk around. Mm-hmm. Just do a lap, just do a perimeter all the way around. And that helps settle anxiety a little bit, because now because part of anxiety is kind of this primitive, like, I'm in danger feeling, mm-hmm. right? And so if you're in an environment where you can't see around corners and you don't know who's doing what, then you're kind of always on edge. Mm-hmm. So go ahead, walk around the room, just kind of become familiar with the room, allow yourself kind of that feeling of like, okay, I'm safe, I'm okay to be here, and no one's going to hurt me. Okay, great. Now I can kind of focus on what I want to do. So a big part of really kind of getting into a routine is just going there enough to become familiar with the place and to feel like it's your place.
Mm-hmm. This isn't a joke, because it is very much like me in HVAC commissioning.
Okay.
Because when I do get to a new work site for the first time, like when I first started this job, no idea what I'm doing, no business being there by myself doing what I do. It is all overwhelming. There's just so much stuff, so many different pieces of equipment that I have to deal with. No idea, but I do exactly that. It's the same way as the gym. Walk in, set my tools down, do a lap of the site, identify everything. And I struggle with anxiety dealing with other people just in general. And there are so many people on a work site who I don't know, never spoken to before. I get to do a lap of them, sort of try and identify who's who, what they're doing. It's solid advice for the gym.
Yeah, it's interesting. It really works. And the thing is too, is like, if you go and you still feel like you're not getting comfortable there, that's okay. Because like I said, I mean, the gym that I go to, I've been going there for the last 4 years, I think. And I still have that feeling, and that's normal. It's okay to feel that way. And then I think the other thing too is to kind of learn how to be your own cheerleader. Yeah. And when you do something really well, to be able to be like, hey, you know what? Great job. Or, days where I feel like I don't want to go work out and I just can't get into it. And I don't want to go. I want to stay in bed. If I'm driving and I actually get to the parking lot, in my head, I'm telling myself, hey, good job. And actually sincerely meaning it. Like, hey, that's a huge, huge obstacle. And you just overcame that. Even though it feels like it's nothing, it's a big deal, And so if I go in there and even if I don't do my workout as planned, if I just walk in the door, spend 5 minutes on a treadmill, I've done something. And that's a victory and that's a success. And you just build off of those. But if you don't give yourself credit for those things that you're doing, then it becomes really hard to continue to do them because no one else is going to do it. No one else is going to be like, hey, good job waking up and getting in your car this morning and driving to the parking lot. Good job. And it's the same way with and again, here's another parallel with my addictions work is I had to tell people all the time, like, you're going to make some amazing early, decisions in early recovery. Like you're going to make some key decisions that could make the difference between long-term recovery and a relapse, and absolutely no one will notice you did it. So if you don't congratulate yourself for those things, then you're gonna feel like everybody, like no one cares. No one cares what you're doing. Like, no, people care. They can't see your thoughts. They can't see these mental obstacles that you're jumping through. So you have to become your own cheerleader and you have to be able to reinforce those yourself. That's very important.
So what percentage of mental health care is just talking yourself up?
Huge.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to save some room for like medications, which can be helpful.
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, that's a lot of what it is, I mean, that's really what cognitive behavioral therapy is just kind of learning how to do that yourself. It's unfortunately, I think part of if CBT has a bad reputation at all, it's probably because it does tend to focus a lot on identifying errors, identifying cognitive distortions. So like things you're doing wrong, right? And I say wrong kind of in air quotes because it's not really wrong. But that's kind of sometimes the perception is that you feel like you're always identifying your flaws. But I think a big part of CBT is also kind of training yourself that internal dialogue of being able to recognize, like, when you do something well, to be able to give yourself a pat on the back and work through that. But I mean, that's useful for pretty much any mental health diagnosis that I can think of, whether it be, attention deficit disorder, and like, hey, you know what? I was able to maintain focus for the majority of that conversation. Awesome. Good job. Or, I feel really depressed, but I actually went out and I went for a walk. I did something about my depression. Great job. And so building that internal dialogue and being able to reinforce yourself for really good decisions, I think is necessary. I don't think you can get very far without it.
So tell us a little bit more then, as we wrap up, about MentalFit personal training. Is it a program? Is it one-on-one with you?
So great question. So what I do, there's two different versions of my program. One of them is in person. So I have a few clients here in Las Vegas that I meet with on a regular basis. And so we go to the gym together, and it is a fully guided personal training session. So the personal training piece is really focused on the actual movement, making sure we're doing the exercises correctly. Some people will work with me for personal training because they have a fear of getting hurt. They want to make sure that they're doing the movements correctly. Other times they need guidance, like they just need that program to be built so that they can follow through with it. Other times it's accountability. So they know if I'm meeting them there at the same time, that like they can't just be like, oh, I want to sleep in. Well, like, oh no, Nick woke his ass up at 4:45. So you better be there, So there's that kind of accountability to it. But a big part of what I do with MentalFit is also the coaching between sessions. So I've got the in-person sessions that I do, and then there's a virtual program that I do. And then so both of them have guided training for like going to the gym or the guided workouts. And then the coaching sessions are sessions that we would basically meet over Zoom, and we can, discuss, and we can just kind of talk. And so a lot of those coaching sessions, they're not therapy, because I'm not using any kind of therapeutic model or approach. I'm not using any of that stuff that I learned as a therapist. It's really just, we're identifying some obstacles, and I'm helping them, identify some ways to get over or around some of those obstacles. So a lot of that time some of my coaching sessions we've spent talking about just motivation in general. I'm really struggling this week, sticking to my plan. How do I, and we kind of walk through that. Sometimes we talk about people's anxiety about, going to the gym, about being around other people, working out in front of other people, like we talked about earlier. Sometimes it's, food related, and it's whatever the person is struggling with. We use those coaching sessions to kind of work through that. So the online program, basically, I will build a workout specific to your needs, and I have an app that you can use. So you go through the app, and the app pretty much walks you through the workout, and then you can log your results into the app. I can see on my end what you're doing, and we can communicate, correspond back and forth through the app. We can send videos to each other, stuff like that. So that's pretty much what it is. It's just a mixture of the personal training and the coaching sessions together.
And is this available worldwide? Or
it is.
It is.
Yeah, it is.
That's great.
I've got one client up in Scotland, actually.
Yay.
I know you're in Ireland, Brogan, but Scotland is nearby.
Okay, Jacob.
Almost went a whole episode.
Yep, I've been waiting for an hour to say that.
That's perfect.
Oh, it's a good thing I love you all so much.
Yes.
But yeah, I got people all across the United States that are using the app, and then like I said, Scotland. I feel like I've got maybe a few more else. Canada, I got some Canadians. So
that's still North America. I don't count Canada as international for you.
The Canadians would definitely describe themselves as being separate from the United States.
Yeah, I just realized I know some Canadians, and I might get yelled at for that.
Yeah.
Check it out, mentalfitpersonaltraining.com, and also definitely Podtherapy podcast.
We haven't even talked about the podcast.
No, we haven't. That's okay. That's
fine. Jim covered that.
That's all Jim could talk about. And if you're doing nothing else, it's Mental Health Awareness Month still. If you're doing nothing else for your mental health, be like me and listen to Podtherapy and download mental health memes to your phone.
Yes, exactly.
That's all I'm doing at the moment. But no, in all seriousness, Podtherapy, it's not just straight up in your face therapy podcast. It's very entertaining, hilarious. It's I look forward to it every week.
Thank you. You know what? I look forward to it too. I really love doing the show. It is so much fun. We have a really good time.
When we were visiting and we were invited to sit in on the recording, that was really good fun. That was the first podcast that we got to speak on a microphone while in Vegas. So it had been a few weeks since me and Brogan had recorded anything at all. Yeah, it was good to get back into it, and especially with you guys.
The second podcast you were invited to for Podtherapy didn't go as well. That's the first one.
Yes, yeah.
It's funny because I listened to your podcast when you got back and you did the recap. Yeah, I started laughing out loud because I completely forgot that you got locked outside, and so I got to enjoy it twice when it happened, and then later on hearing you tell about it. Yeah, so it was wonderful.
And I was going to say, Jim, if you're listening, I know you're not, but I'm still owed a virtual and an in-person apology from you, buddy.
Yes.
You can find it's Podtherapy Guys on the Twitter and the all social media. I assume is all the same.
Yeah, I think pretty much all our social media is all Pod Therapy guys. Yep.
Yeah. And if people want to follow you personally, I can see that your Twitter is Nick_Tangeman. Or is it Tangeman? I can't remember.
Yes. Thank you for announcing the Twitter thing, because if you had asked me what my Twitter handle is, I don't think I could have told you.
I've got the Twitter page right now. Looking
Perfect.
at that. There you go. This is, we were talking about it in the bonus content for this episode, but there's a photo of you standing in front of the old Stardust sign at the Neon Museum. You can put that up on MentalFit website.
I should actually. That's probably a good photo. It kind of highlights my ass, because if I remember correctly, I'm kind of looking away and kind of like I'm doing that sexy turn over the shoulder look, right? Yeah,
that's it. It's like, I know I'm getting my photo taken, but I don't want them to know I know.
Felt cute, might delete later.
Profile pic.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thanks for stopping by and chatting with us.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. It's been good. Unlike some of the other Pod Therapy hosts,
they can't all be winners.
No, you're definitely our favorite guest, which we say to all our guests until the next guest comes on the show. So you currently hold the title.
That's awesome. As long as I'm your favorite guest from Pod Therapy, that's the biggest accomplishment. That's why I'm here, right?
Well, we haven't had Jacob yet, so
yeah. Well, don't, because I want to maintain my title.
Hold the crown, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can also follow us on all social media, things like that, at NicePodBud, and you can follow Brogan at 7 billion needles on social media.
And you can follow Wayne at Wayne Jingle.
Is there anyone you want to say hi to before we go? Just shout out to your folks or anything? No.
Hi, Mom.
I can't say that.
Oh, God, no.
Hi, Brogan's mom.
In that case, thanks for stopping by and having a listen.
Thanks.
As always, stay fresh, cheese bags.